Hey all, Simone here. Hope you guys are having a fabulous day. I'm in beautiful Portland, Maine at this point, and it's quite a fantastic town. If you haven't been here, especially in the summer, I would highly recommend you check it out. So I wanted to talk about something because it just keeps coming up. So when you look about, what questions should you ask that really help your company push the needle, that really get everybody to execute cohesively, that gets everybody to be accountable, and that gets everybody to make the better decisions, the higher level decisions. What do you really need to ask? What systems do you need to have? And what's that thing that makes a huge difference? Most companies are reasonably good, and I'm talking about successful companies, they're reasonably good at asking the questions what and how, because, everybody knows if you don't ask what and how, then you're not going to get anything done, right? So these are easy questions to ask, but they're actually hard to ask consistently. And that's we've talked about this a bunch, and I'll keep talking about this because it is the most important thing on the planet. If you don't ask those questions consistently, you don't get anything out of them. So asking them consistently is the only way you get out of them what you need. So asking what and how only produces a cohesive team that's in cohesive action if you use an interactive system that's as living and breathing as your company. So it doesn't work to ask what and how once, at the beginning of the year, and maybe if you're doing really good, you'll ask it again in the middle of the year. Like right now, we are kind of, halfway. So if you don't ask this consistently on an ongoing basis, what do you get? It's going to be outdated, it's going to be not relevant, so that means it's not going to be used, and you wasted a bunch of time and energy to even ask that thing once. So what and how we're pretty familiar with, although most people kind of ask it the wrong way and don't keep asking it. But the next thing that's even much more important, and it's the foundation of your what and how, is asking why. And, it's been a theme for a while. I mean, there's Simon Sinek with the Ask the Question Why. And I mean, he wrote a ton about it. Other people wrote a ton about it. Some people have known for a while this is a really, really important question to ask. But how many actually ask this, again, on a consistent basis? Like, have you asked it in your company? Do you keep asking it? And there's also another thing to it. It's like there's that esoteric why, as in why do we exist? Who are we? All that kind of stuff. What do we do? That goes into that. But there's actually another huge level. So I'll go through a bunch of different ones. So some of you guys might be familiar with the big why that starts with, what's our North Star? Like, why do we do this? What inspires me? What inspires others? Why do I get out of bed every morning, although this is so difficult? Why do I go through this pain and suffering? If you don't keep asking that question, it's really going to be difficult to keep getting out of bed. And when the going gets tough, you really want to ask that question and remind yourself you want to connect with it. So asking that esoteric big why, I'm not at all putting it down. It's a really, really important thing you do. And it's really important that you connect with it on a consistent basis. So it's a really important thing to ask for the big why. So that done, let's just assume you do that already. And that's also the thing that keeps you from burning out when you've been working a gazillion hours, when things are going really wrong. That is the question to keep asking. So the next one, though, is there's the matching why. And that's one that I love talking about because it's that thing that really matters when we come to user base, clients, customers, partners, all those. Because especially the newer generations, I mean, everybody loves to bag on the millennials, but there's one great thing about the millennial generation is they really need to know why they do something. That has to do, they vote with their spending. They would rather spend more money if their why matches with the company's why that they're buying from. They would rather make less money if the company they want to work for matches with theirs, but they can't pay them as much. There's a lot of actually attachment to having impact, to having a greater outcome. So you have to really think about this from your marketing perspective as well, because here's the deal. People don't just buy a product, they buy a story, and it's mostly that they're going to buy the story that makes them feel something. So you want to articulate your mission in a way that really magnetizes your audience, and that helps you drive your traffic organically, and it saves you a ton of effort and, in the end, marketing dollars. So we have the big why, the esoteric one, and then we have that matching why that really helps with your audience. And when I'm saying audience, I'm not just talking about your clients and your customers. I'm also talking about the team you might hire, any new talent that's coming in, board members, partnerships, all those people. So everybody who is attached to making impact will want to ask that question. So we have the big why, the marketing why, and then the one that I really want to talk about is the context why. Because if you can tell your team why they're doing something, and they have all the information and context to how their efforts fit in with the big picture of the company, you are in so much better shape. Because here's the deal. When they can answer that question, when they know to ask that question, and when they can answer that question, they will have so much more ownership over the outcome that they can help you have. So the outcome of the entire project, not just the little thing that they're handling, right? So that's one big thing. Also, they can make much better decisions because they understand the big picture now. So just think of this. If you are somebody who's working on a small bit of a larger project, but you understand what the larger project will do in the long run with the entire company, with everybody fits in it, you can make much better decisions even when you can't ask somebody, right? If something comes up where you don't know who to ask or what to answer, if you know how your little puzzle piece fits into the rest of it, you're in much better shape. So that's a huge one. And then also that piece of ownership and accountability, because when you understand how what you do impacts a whole bunch of other people, you're much more likely to show up. So accountability goes through the roof because they understand, your team understands, if they don't deliver, this will impact many other people, and a lot of people will not be able to do their job right. Clients won't get what they have been promised. Your company is not going to look good. So understanding that why on a much bigger level is huge for accountability and ownership. So this is really this last why, and that's, if you don't want to do the other stuff, you lose a lot of stuff, but you can't do without this last piece, that context why, because that's really the foundation, like I said in the beginning, for asking what and how. And if you don't ask what and how, you might as well pack it in right now. So you need to ask those in conjunction with the why. So, because here's what happens. If you don't ask that, if you don't give people that context why they're doing something, like I said, you will have no follow through, and that means you will have to follow up consistently because they're not connected to the outcome. They're not connected to the bigger picture. They are not connected to the bigger impact on the whole company. So it's up to you to basically follow up and follow up and follow up. So that feels like micromanaging. That disempowers people, and nobody is inspired by that, right? So that's that piece. And also, as I've mentioned before, when somebody can't answer you a question, or somebody else, you're not around, they have nobody to ask. If they haven't asked that why question before, if you haven't given them that context, they will be tapping in the dark without further help if they get stuck. But if you have asked that question and you've answered that question for them, they'll be much more likely to be able to make really good independent decisions. And that's what you want them to do, right? Make independent decisions that are really good. And also, when you think about that, if you don't know the context behind what you're doing, any of your actions can become a huge blocker for everybody else because you don't understand how what you do affects other people. So, the most asked question in most of the startups I work with is how does what I do impact the rest of the company? How do like my actions really impact the other departments? So a lot of times that question isn't asked, it's not answered, and people tap in the dark all the time. But if you understand the why, the context behind it, it's much easier to answer that question yourself. And just face it, it's crazy how fast things change, especially in a startup environment. So a lot of times the how and the what hasn't even caught up, but you still have to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So keep asking that question. It is so important. So I want to give you something to do for this week so that you can actually work on this and see how it really makes a huge difference when you get this right. So just this week, to practice, start asking why before you do anything, and then listen to your answer and course correct. So ask yourself why and course correct. If you're noticing you're not quite congruent, you don't have quite the right answer for it. And then anytime you tell somebody something to do, give them the why, give them the context. Start telling them why you asking them to do this, and why it needs to be done, and what the relationship of the whole thing is. And observe the difference. This is the really big things. Like, give people that why, see how it really affects how they're doing stuff, and then observe the difference. So that's your homework this week. Let me know how it goes after you practice this for at least a week. And smart, committed CEOs don't miss this ever, because they know how important it is. So keep thinking differently. That's what it got you here, so don't stop now. And if you want to know more, if you want to get a lot more about this piece, go to bulletproofstartups.com and watch the training, and you can even apply for a call with me on that. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.